Bruchim Aboim B'Shem Irgin Shir Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yaakov Zev Smith Shlita on Hilchas Brocha Samay Cholim Chadoshim. I'd like to give a big shekayach to the board members of Irgin Shir Torah, Barry Parnas, for sponsoring today's shir. Lili Nishmas Oviv, Rabbi Yaakov Zev, and Rabbi Sotzka, Shalom, Liyotza Yugim Elul. Also like to give a big shekayach to Rabbi Steinman, another board member of Irgin Shir Torah, sponsoring today's shir, Lili Nishmas Oviv, Rabbi Yitzchak Yehuda, Ben Rabbi Yisrael, Shalom Yotzai Tessa, Obtainish Meseim, Tzeruris, B'tzara Chaim. To have the great schus of sponsoring a shir, call Irgin Shir Torah at 718-851-8651 or email irginshirtorah@yeshivanet.com. Now Rav Smith.
As I'll say, it's Taku Baraisu, Bora Alma, and one of the types in that is that we think we have certain situations and we have to know the halacha, but its emes is just the opposite. The Baruch gave us a world with different realities, so there's a Torah. In other words, we don't have, it's not pshat to have a father, and therefore we have to have the mitzvah of kibbut of aim. Just the opposite. The Baruch wanted to give us the schus of kibbut of aim, and therefore he gave us a father. And when you see this, I think, on a continuous level, when it comes to Hilchas Brachas, as much as you learn Hilchas Brachas, there's always new shilas, there's always new sugyas, and you see that the different foods were given for us to look into it and try to find the right halachos. And although we did in Hilchas Brachas in the past, I want to talk about a specific sugya, I guess I call it the contemporary foods, new foods that present their own challenge. And I'll give you just a few samplings. Today it's become more and more popular to serve salad with croutons. And the question is asked, do you make two brachas? Do you make only hamazainos? You know, there are some croutons that halacha lamaisa, it's hamoitzi. Does that mean that if you have croutons with salad, you have to wash and make hamoitzi? Doesn't sound right, but why not? Or today there's an ice cream, cookies and cream. There's basically an ice cream with pieces of cookies in it. Do you make two brachas, one bracha? There's chocolate-covered mini cookies, mini pretzels. There's a cereal, as we'll soon see, Crispix, which I am convinced was given just for Amolei Torah. There's never been such a shayla in Hilchas Brachas, I think, since the Torah was given, such a challenging shayla, as we'll see. But basically, I think we could reduce it to one question, as we try to always do. The crux of the issue is, regarding a regular ikkev v'tafel, it's usually clear. You put sour cream on latkes, so the latkes is adama, the sour cream is a shakel, but it's clear that the sour cream is enhancing, is flavoring the latkes. But we seem to remember that when you have a mezainis food mixed in, it's automatically mezainis. Now, is that true? Is that across the board? That means you make a mezainis on cookies and cream and you make mezainis on salad. But there's another factor that has to be considered. That maybe we'll look at it like two foods. And I'll give you a simple example. One of the questions I want to discuss today is people that have various types of herring, and you have a cracker with the herring. Is that only mezainis? Or maybe since the ik is the herring, disregard the cracker? Or maybe it's two foods. It wasn't baked together like a strudel. It wasn't put together and combined like ice cream that has cookies in it. You're taking two foods, eating it together. You know what's something similar to that? What we say, coffee and cake. We almost say it b'neshima achas, like, you know, aseres b'nei haman, coffee and cake. But no one says you make a mezainis on the cake and not a shakel on the coffee, because it's two foods. So maybe we'll say when you have such an interesting combination, make two brachas, two foods. So that's our question, and we're going to look into our chazal and hopefully get clear guidance. The Gemara in Brachas Daf Lamed Vav Amud Beis speaks about chavitz kedera. Now chavitz kedera is a cereal. In fact, the Gemara says a farina cereal is vadei mezainis. It's a cooked farina, cooked wheat product. It's vadei mezainis. But chavitz kedera is unique because the ikar is the honey that's added. So it has a flour base, but the ikka is the honey. So Rabbi Yehuda says, you make a shakel. You told me the honey is the ikka, make a shakel. But Rav Kahana oima bar mina mezainos. Why? And the Gemara explains, Kol sheyesh bei mechameshes minim mevarchen Allah bari minim bezaynis. Zok the Gemara, when it comes to a food combination, you have to figure out what's the ikka. But if it has chemine dagon, it's automatically mezaynis. And that's the way the Gemara paskins, and we'll soon see the Shulchan Aruch paskins like that. And that's the klal that we mentioned in the beginning of kol sheyesh boi. We'll call it kol sheyesh boi, kol sheyesh boi chameshes min dagon. You automatically make him mezaynis. The question is why? What's the big yichus of hey min dagon? So the Torah in Siman Reish Ches explains there are two milas to hey min dagon. First of all, hey min dagon is what Eretz Yisrael was gebenched with. Eretz chita sa'ir. So hey min dagon have yichus. They're chashiv. Also, hey minei dagon are more filling, as the Torah says, because it's al aleim yichya adam. It's just more filling. Wheat is more filling than corn. So, because of these two milas, Chazal said, whenever you have a hey minei dagon component, make him a zaynis. That's it. That's why on a honey flavored farina, even though the ikka might be the honey, make him a zaynis. And that's in Shulchan Aruch, Reish Ches Siv Beis. The only question is this unconditional? Is this a klal without any exceptions? Then it'll come out a very interesting chiddush. Cookies and cream ice cream is only mezaynis. Salad with croutons is mezaynis. And just anything that has mezaynis in it, well, let's go further. We will say, Ibayis ein mikra, Ibayis ein mesvara. The lashon of the Gemara is kol sheyesh by hey minei dagon. What does kol mean? Everything. It doesn't say 50%. So maybe taka, whatever has mezaynis is automatically mezaynis. That's the primacy. The Ibayis ein kra, a svara, I'm sorry, the Torah svara. The Torah says chamesh minei dagon is chashiv. So it's chashiv. Why shouldn't it be mezaynis? The Ibayis aim a svara, because if you'll tell me that kol sheyesh b'chamesh min dagan is only when the dagan is the ikka. So what's the klal of kol sheyesh by? Every ikka v'tafel is totally an ikka v'tafel. So it seems clear that whenever you have a chamesh min dagan component, the bracha is mezaynis. And indeed, there's a Shitas Rivav, that's on the side of the page of the Rif, who was a nephew of Ben Ezrachi, one of the Rishonim. He says, even though the ikka is the other min, but lemaisa kol sheyesh bei hey minei dagan, you make him a zaynis. And that's the Rashba in the beginning of Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis. Even if the ikka is the dvash, but you make him a zaynis on this cereal, because kol sheyesh bei chameshes minei dagan seems to be unconditional. And the Magen Avram in Kuf Samaches Sif Katan Tezvav, the Prima Gadim and Rashi Yosef and Al Gemara, as the Imrei Noyam and Al Gemara all say, even if the other component is the ikar, but kol sheyesh bechamesh min dagan, you make him a zaynis. And that's why we find some poskim say on schnitzel, or better yet, on a quarter of a chicken that you put a breading, a mezaynis coating on it, you make only mezaynis. Now, it's very hard to understand that, because you have a quarter of a chicken, or a nice chicken cutlet, and you put a thin coating of mezaynis, you make only mezaynis? I mean, every normal person knows that the chicken's the ikka. But this is an example of kol sheyesh v'chamesh min dagan. And as early as the Ginas V'Radim and Aleph Chav Beis speaks about something similar, mulaisis of basar or cheese, but the point is, it's a basar that has a coating, you make only mezaynis. Now, the truth is, today, very often, the coating is made out of cornflakes, flour, milled corn, so that would be a shackle. So shackle and shackle is fine. But we're talking about a mezaynis coating. The bracha on chicken cutlets, schnitzel, fried fish would be bari min mezaynis. Everybody knows the chicken is the ikka, but this is an example of kol sheyesh bechamesh minei dagan. However, before we apply this more lamaisa, we have to learn one more yesod. Because Tosfos on our Gemara, Naflam Avamad Beis, Taisa says if you have a certain almond dish, I'm not sure if we have this something similar today, but it's an almond dish, that's of course bara priyates, but you add flour, lidabek, if you add flour to give it body, to give it texture, and otherwise it would be falling apart. You add the flour to give it lidabek, to stick it together, to give it body, to give it texture. Ein tzarech levarech bari mina mezainis. What bracha do you make? Whatever the shkedim is. If it's almond, that's eitz, make her eitz. Ignore the flour. Rabbi Kivega on the page points out not just ein tzarech levarech bari mina mezainis. You're not allowed to make a bari mina mezainis because the ikka bracha you make on the almonds. And this is the Gepaskin in Reish Ches Siv Gimel, the next Siv. Reish Ches Bey says mezainis v'ikka. Reish Ches Gimel says if the mezainis is there to hold it together, l'dabek, to glue it, so to speak, disregard it. Ma'anishtana. What's the difference? A good example of l'dabek is licorice. I don't know if the Olam knows this. Licorice could be up to 40% flour. I don't know if you heard what I said. 40% flour and licorice. So that's why originally some said licorice is mezainis. But I saw in the Sefer Pischei Halacha, he wrote a letter to the Hershey company, that was the big manufacturer of licorice, and they said, and I quote, no, the flour is added to give it body. Oh, they were mechavan to a taisnis, ladabek, and they added, I don't think they use this lashon, varaya. For a long time they used to use potato starch. So if it will be, obviously it's not the taste of flour because they use potato starch. So what is the flour in licorice? Ladabek. So what bracha you make on licorice? Shahako. So now we see something interesting. Kol sheyesh ba is true, mezainis, but if it's there ladabek, ignore the flour. Comes again the Rambam, and the Mechaber Reish Dalet Yud Beis quotes it halacha, lav dafka ladabek. If you add flour to give it either smell or a good appearance, we'll soon see if you sprinkle cake crumbs on a ice cream just to make it look nice, it's also bottle. Cake crumbs is mezainis. The Adineza in the Tshuv and Siman Lamed Ches discusses someone that finds it hard to eat solid foods, so they make a meat and they add flour to soften the meat. So he says it's also the flour's bottle. What's the point? It seems that kol sheyesh ba is not 100% klal. If you put the flour in for taste, you make a mezainis. If you put the flour in for a different reason, ignore the flour. What's the pshat? But we have one more problem. Because it's not just a Gemara that we're worried about, it's a Mishnah. It's a Mishnah that whenever you learn Hilchos Brachas, you are surprised. In Brachas Mem Dalet, the Mishnah says if you have a very, very salty fish, which we do not have today, incidentally, but in those days they had a salty fish that was inedible as it is. It was so salty you couldn't eat it as it is. So you ate the fish either with or bread after the salty fish. So you made a shackle on the fish and no bracha on the bread. Now this is shocking, because bread is the kodesh hakadoshim of foods. So if mezainis is not bottle, certainly bread is not bottle. So how could bread be bottle? So here we come to the aside that true. If mezainis was put in for flavor, kol sheyesh ba, you make a mezainis. If it's something there, not lekavanas achila, I'm going to use a term, if it's a tafel gomor, it's not even there for eating. It's there to hold it together, to look nice. It's there to offset the strong, salty taste of the fish. I'll use a lashon. It's like in a fire extinguisher. Just to calm your mouth down, but not to eat the bread. If it's not there for achila, it's not on the map. So there's tafel and there's tafel gomer. When bread or mezainis is tafel gomer, it's not food. If it's not food, it's bottled automatically. And you look at the Rosh in Siman Zayin, when he talks about our cereal, listen to what he says. He says, if the most of it, of this honey cereal, is honey, and you added a little bit flour to hold it together, then you make a shackle. If, says the Rosh, you have a cereal that has flour and honey, and the flour is there for part of the cereal, then enecham you make a mezainis. So we see, true, kol sheyesh ba is a cloud, but we saw two exceptions. If it's there ledabek, or like the Rambam says, for looks, or for appearance, or for niceness, then it's bottle, or the bread is also a tafel gamor. Now listen to this. If you look at the Meiri, Daflam, but Vavam Beis, the Meiri says that the case of the honey cereal was not the way the other Rishonim learned, that the ikka is the honey, and the flour is just there a little bit, just there, just to put in. No. Says the Meiri, the only time you make a mezainis on the honey cereal is if the flour is a chashiv, a part of it. If you added just a little bit honey, but it's clear that the ikka is the honey, you make a shakel. Why? You're not putting it in ledabek, you're putting it into for taste. So evidently, the Meiri held that just like ledabek is bottled, and salty fish and bread, the bread is bottled, a little bit flour in a lot of honey, and the ik is the honey, ignore the flour. It's there for taste, but the dominant taste is the honey. The roiv is the honey. The mezainis can't stand on its own 2 feet. And this is why you'll see roiv gedolei haposkim Hashem mipiyam anu chayim all say on a chicken cutlet or a quarter of a chicken that's breaded or schnitzel or fish, the bracha is shahakol. Kol sheyesh boy. So as the Chazon Ish says, sefart fish. Now what he meant to say is, how could a fish that has a thin coating, how could the fish be bottled? Or as Rabbi Rabbi Yaakov Zev said this lashon also, at the end of the day, with all the lumbus in the world, the breading is a coating to the fish or the chicken. But what's the ikka? You could say gemaras and shechlach, but what's the ikka, Rabbi? The ikka is the chicken. The ikka is the cutlet. Now, till today, we wouldn't understand that, because what's wrong kol sheyesh boy? But as Rav Oznan Chelik Dalet Siman Kuf Samach Aleph says, Dava Mitzupa is bottled to the ikka. The fish and the chicken is the ikka, and the coating is the Dava Mitzupa. How could the tzipui be the ikka over the ikka? Now again, we say, why not? But here's the point. If you hold kol sheyesh ba is unconditional, no exceptions, period, then chicken cutlet is no different. But once we say there's an exception, that's called the dabek. If it looks nice, give it reyach, salty fish and bread. So obviously it's not automatically kol sheyesh ba. So here we seem to see an extension of that chicken cutlets or fried fish is not ledabek, it's there as a coating, but still the ikka is the fish or the chicken. Rav, in Nissen Gestatten, Chelik Dalet Siman Tes, ikka kavanasi achilas basa v'lo yatzipui. And he quotes our Avnei Neza. So it seems that although we would have thought that chicken cutlet is a vadei mezainis, most paiskim, I went through this more be'in, but you could trust me, most paiskim, that Betzina Rav, Chelik Hey, Samach Aleph, Laris Nasan, Chelik Hey, Vav, has another two about it, seem to say that fried chicken or fried fish, which means a breaded coating, is only a shakel near B'dvar. Now, I can't say all agree to that. There are places that hold that you make a mezainis kol sheyesh boy. But if you learn the sugya, you'll come out with, I think, the right maskana, that what we tell people is, if you have fried chicken, cutlets, schnitzel, it's advisable to make a mezainis on a different food, take a little piece of cake, whatever it is, a shakel on different food, and then eat the cutlet gesund to hate. We never say that because you don't have to learn halacha and say eat different foods. But this is something that is really very hard to say with any definite psak. It's only a shakel, but that's what the poskim say. We would think it's only mezainis, but the poskim say it's only shakel. So the real fruma started making chicken cutlets and breaded chicken or fried fish with cornflakes crumbs. So then there's no shaila. You avoid the whole shaila. But if you have a mezainis coating, it's advisable to make a mezainis on one food, a shak on another food, and then have the cutlets gesundheit. If it comes to what should I do, I only have this food, it makes sense to make only a shahako like Rav Paiskin. But what I would say is, today there are many varieties where the coating is also an ikar. For example, a quarter of a chicken with a bread coating, the chicken is the ikar. But you have chicken nuggets, which is, I would say, 60% flour base, and the little chicken is in a zeichel churban, you have to find it. But there, not only is the breading an ikar, as far as the majority, but it's also there to fill you up. It's like it's like giving a piece of mezainis kugel in a nice way. Or fish sticks, as opposed to fried fish, a big part of it is the coating. Oh, that I could say is only mezainis, because there, first of all, it's there for it's yesh b'chamesh min adagan, and it's a pretty big mandiyama. It's pretty important, and it's even the rive. So then you could only make a mezainis on the chicken nuggets, on fish sticks. But if you have a nice piece of chicken or a piece of chicken cutlet and there's a thin coating, you make the minig is to make a shakol, and best would be to make brachas on different foods. To apply this to the myriad of other shilas, I'll start with an interesting shilah. I learned the Paiskim, the Eretz Yisrael Paiskim, discuss a food that's called botnim Americanium. I asked a few Americans, they had no idea what it is. I asked the Eretz Yisrael, botnim Americanium is an Israeli food. Now, why they give yichus to America, veisach nicht. But no one American, pretty much knew what it was. But it's basically a peanut that has a flour coating. And instead of putting sugar coating, it's a flour coating. So this is interesting. This is a simple case of kol sheyesh bai. But you make a mezainis on a peanut that's coated, why not? So what I thought, what the emes is, this is totally in the shaila of a chicken cutlet. If you hold chicken cutlets is a shakel, because the ikka is the inside, the tzipui is batel, then if you make a shakel on a chicken cutlet, you make a hadama on bot Americanium. And Reza Pella, Rav Vosna, who writes in an earlier tshuva to make a shakel on chicken cutlets, in Chelik Vav, Chav Dalid, in the subsequent tshuva, he speaks about this bot Americanium, and he says you make a hadama, not a mezainis, because that's taka, the ikka is the inside. The Pischei Halacha, who has two tshuvas, one's in the sefer, one in the back, in the Luyim Yud Beis, who says chicken cutlet is a mezainis, because kol sheyesh bai. So at the end of Perik Zayin of a sefer, he taka says that on these coated peanuts, you make only boirei mina mezainis. So it comes out very nicely that these coated peanuts, these flour coated peanuts, are similar to chicken cutlets. If you make a mezainis on cutlets, it's mezainis on this nut as well. Today they have chocolate covered mini cookies or mini pretzels. If you never saw it, you have to picture a little tiny cookie or a tiny pretzel round, and there's chocolate around it. What bracha you make on that? There's a mezainis and there's a shakel. So pashit, it would be only mezainis, because this is not like a chicken cutlet that's very choshev. This is the mezainis that's choshev. The mezainis is probably the roiv, and you have a thin chocolate coating. So it's kol sheyesh bai, and also the ikka is the inside. The tzipui is bottle. So it makes sense that chocolate covered mini cookies or mini pretzels should be only boirei mina mezainis. When you bite into it, you first taste a little bit of the chocolate. Okay, big deal. It's one food gets one bracha. The real shaila is if you decide to first suck the chocolate coating, and then you eat the peanut, the cookie separately. So that's a little challenging, because you're taking one food, and you're deciding to make it into two. First you have the chocolate candy, and then you have the little cookie. So listen, if you want to eat two foods, make two brachas. We only make one food on one bracha, but you're eating it separately. So what do? You make a shakel on the chocolate, and of course when no one's looking, don't do them when people are looking, it's not nice. Take out the cookie, make a bracha, and put it back. Now why can you make a bracha when the cookie's in your mouth? Because you're malei piti lasecha. but it's not nice for other people. So taking out food from your mouth, so do it, no one's looking, shackle, and then bury mina mezainis. Rav Vozna, Zechron Levrochen, Chelik Zayin, Chav Zayin, Hey, feels that you can't make two foods even on this. He says, Lamaisa became one, so make only mezainis. We'll get back to that hopefully a little later. But Lamaisa, the point is, if you eat it as two foods, you can make two brachas. But the question is, what are you doing? Every child knows you make mezainis first, and then shackle. And you're making shackle first. But the answer is pashut. What could you do? You're first having the shackle as a separate food. It's shackle. Then you get to the ikka, you're eating the ikka first. So you have no choice. So you have to make a shackle on the tafel, and then a mezainis on the ikka. And the Emma says this yisoid, that even though ikka v'tafel you make one bracha, but if you eat the tafel first, you have to make a tafel and then ikka, is not my chiddush, is the Trumas Hadeshen in Siman Lamed Aleph. If you look it up, there are more, in Reish Yud Beis, Siv Beis quotes it, and the way we once explained, this Trumas Hadeshen is very pashut. When we say you make a bracha on the ikka and you don't make a bracha on the tafel, it's not because the tafel doesn't count. Rather, the mevarach ala ikka upaites atvei, like the Mishnah says in brachas. So if you make a bracha on the ikka, you pater the tafel. You make a mezainis on the cereal, you pater the milk. But here, you decide to eat the tafel first. So you can't eat without a bracha. The bracha later on the cookie is going to go l'mafreya. The Trumas Hadeshen doesn't work. There's no bracha l'mafreya. So you have no choice but to make a shackle on the tafel, and then make a mezainis on the cookie when you get to it. Question: if someone will tell you, listen, I don't know halacha, but I know one thing. I am eating, the main part of this cookie is the chocolate. What bracha do I make? Because you're telling me that the ik is the cookie. I'm telling you the ik is the chocolate. You can't fight with someone's preference. So here we'll say maybe kol sheyesh boy, and I don't care about your preference. Because the mezainis is there for tam, which makes a lot of sense. Because the truth is, if you don't like the cookie part, so suck the chocolate and throw out the cookie. Teretz says you like the cookie. So it's hard to just disregard the mezainis. But such a person, Taka, could make a shackle first on the chocolate, suck the chocolate, and then make a mezainis on the cookie. If he eats it together as one, it's hard to believe that you only make a shackle if you have a cookie and you do like the taste of it, and it's the roiv nachtetzu. So it's hard to ignore the cookie part of it. Especially because here, the tzipui is bottled to the cookie. And you want to say the cookie is bottled to the tzipui, it's just the opposite of the chicken cutlet. So it's hard just to ignore the cookie, so you make a mezainis on the cookie, which patters the chocolate as well. Another new mitzias is what's called cookie and cream. Basically, it's regular ice cream. Instead of putting in chocolate chips, they put in literally pieces of cookies, cracked pieces of cookies, regular mezainis cookies. So if you have ice cream chocolate chips, it's simple. It's all shackle. But here you have mezainis pieces and an ice cream. Now, what do you say with this? It is the ice cream. But the truth is, the mezainis is not just, negligible. It's called cookies and cream. In fact, it's even called cookies before cream. So you'll say, but listen, the ice cream is the ikka, but then again, kol sheyesh by. So the way I understood it is, if you make a mezainis on chicken cutlets, because you are a straight shooter, kol sheyesh by is kol sheyesh by, period. Then on cookies and cream, believe it or not, you will make one bracha by mina mezainis, because lamaisa kol sheyesh by. If you are a person that you look at the bigger picture and you say kol sheyesh by has to be reasonable, but the ik is the chicken. I make a shahak on the chicken, I pater the coating. It's possible on cookies and cream to make only a shahakal and ignore the cookies and cream, the cookie part of it. Even though here it's not a tzipui, but then again it's just a tafel. Now I couldn't find this cookies and cream in a Rishon, but I did find Rabelski in a Sefer Shulchan Alevi Amud Lamed Ches. He discusses this very question of cookies and cream, and he says it emphatically that the klal of kol sheyesh ba is not unreasonable. It's not cross the board. Automatically, mezainis don't consider any other factor. If it's clear that the ik is the other ingredient, then you make on the other ingredient and ignore the mezainis, and that's why on cookies and cream the ik is the ice cream, make a shackle, and ignore the cookie part of it. And I was thinking, if obviously he also held that on cutlets you make a shackle. Ataka early in Amid Lamed Aleph of a Seifa, he says that on chicken cutlets it's only a shahakel, so it's obviously the shitasei. If you take the approach kol sheyesh by is limited, then cutlets could be a shahakel, and so too cookies and cream ice cream could be only a shahakel. Now, what I also found, I was grateful that I found also, he says there, if you have a thick coating on the schnitzel, then you make only mezainis. That would certainly substantiate what I said earlier. If you have chicken nuggets or breaded or fish sticks, it's only mezainis, because there we could understand that would be the ikka. Today people have an aversion to wash. I don't know why. If you wash, you have a mitzvah darbanan of Netilas Yadayim, and you zeichu the mitzvah deraisa of benching. But people are afraid to wash. But they want to have some substance in their lunch. So here what people have is they have crackers, and today there are so many crackers with everything, with nothing, salt-free, probably a whole shelves in groceries of different crackers. So you have lunch. Obviously the ikka is the tuna fish, or the gefilte fish, or the salami, or the chopped liver, whatever it is. You put that onto a cracker. What bracha do you make on your lunch that consists of a cracker with a topping? So let's go slow. If you have cracker with butter, cream cheese, or any topping for that matter, jam, there's no doubt about it, it's only mezainis. This is called sheyesh bay. Plus, the cracker is the ikka, right? The jam is enhancing the cracker. That's possible. More so, if you have a mezainis cracker, and you want to give it a little bit flavor, but you're a besser mensch. I don't just put plain jam. I put tuna fish on my cracker. But the ik is the cracker. Zok the Mishtabur and Reish Yud Beis Yivkot and Vav. Pasa Babakistan, which means a cracker with gavina. Or Shar Davel Alafas Boy, any other topping. You make only Bayre Mina Mezainis. Which also we can understand. Because it's basically a better jam. Instead of using jam, you use gefilte fish. But the ik is the cracker. The Sharatzian adds, quoting the Magen Gibayrim, he says, that's the minig. It's like having any other ik of a tuffle that you make one bracha. And it's not like coffee and cake or schnapps and cake, because that's two foods. And this is one food eaten together. So if you have a cracker and you want to give it some flavor and you take a chashiv of food, you take cheese, salami, or tuna fish, it's only mezainis. But the truth is, our case is fundamentally different. If you notice what I told you, the ikka is the healthy food. You want to have the gefilte fish, the meat, the tuna fish, but you want to have a little taste to it. So here it's very different. Here it's gefilte fish with a cracker. What's the ikka? The fish. You know where you see this most blatantly? People go to a kiddush and they have herring. There are so many herrings. So herring is the ikka. You want to have a little bit, a little zest to it, so you take a cracker with the herring. But listen to the way you said it. I'm having cracker with the herring. The ikka is the herring. Instead of putting mayonnaise on your gefilte fish, you put a cracker on your gefilte fish. But the ikka is the fish. So here we come to an interesting thing. Do we say kol sheyesh bay? Cracker is a cracker. So make a mezainis, and it doesn't make a difference what you put on the cracker. Or maybe we'll go back to our yesod that we learned today. If you know the ikar is something else, then make under something else. Because there's no doubt about it. I'm talking about when the topping is the ikar. It's not a topping, it's the ikar. And again, the herring with a cracker is a perfect mashal. It's clear with a tug that the herring is the ikka. Now the truth is, what we learned till now, schnitzel, cookies and cream, maybe applies here as well. I know for a fact that the herring is the ikka. But there's another factor here. Schnitzel was made into one food. So if it's made into one food, you have to decide what bracha it is. Here, maybe it's two foods. It wasn't baked together. You didn't bake the herring onto the cracker. Maybe it's like coffee and cake. Now, I know coffee and cake is more separate, but maybe it's the same thing. Rule number one is on one food you make one bracha. True. But maybe herring and cracker is two foods. And Reza Pella, the Mr. Brura in Reish Yud Beis Yif Cotton Hay, he says, cake and schnapps, of course, you make two brachas, because it's two foods. And he says, you first make on the cake, and then you make on the schnapps. And then he adds, if you have a lekach, cake with a merkachas, and it's clear that you're having it as a separate food, you would have to make two brachas. So maybe herring and cracker is also two separate brachas. But there's one more yesod that significantly impacts our whole sugya. The Kolboi, it's towards the end of Siman Chavdal, the Beis Yosef in Reish Yud Beis quotes it, discusses a merkachas shemanichen al rikiken daken. Now let's be very clear. Rikiken daken is a thin cracker. Okay? Well, I'll use the word rikiken, but it's a thin cracker. Merkachas is something like a cream. A very tasty cream. Okay? So the Kolboi says, if you take, the ik is the cream, but you put it onto a rikiken, onto a cracker, you only make a shahakol. And ignore the cracker. Why? But listen to his lashon. Because Adava Yodua, he says, everybody in the world knows you're not interested in the cracker. Why are you taking the cracker? Because you don't want to be uncouth and stick your hand into the plate and take plain cream and eat plain cream. It's not nice, it's pasnished. So you put the cream onto the cracker. You don't want to get your hands dirty with the cream. But at the end of the day, the ik is the merkachas. The ik is the cream. Why? Mechatesa. But l'maisa, rikikin is mezainis. How you bottle mezainis? But we see something interesting. Cracker and a topping is only shahakal. Can we apply that to herring and a cracker? Maybe, but first we have to learn one more thing. What's taka de pshat in this kolboi? How could it be you have a cracker and a topping and the crack is bottled? What am the kol sheyesh boy? But the mechaber passes like this in two places: Kuf Samaches, Siv Ches, and Reish Yud Beis Siv Beis. That the rikikin is bottled. So here you have Rabbi, you have a treat. Whenever you learn Shulchan Aruch Be'i and look at the Bir Hagra, it's almost always a brief cryptic message, but there's always so much teichen. And the Gra in both places gives us a tremendous yesod. On Kuf Samaches Siv Ches, where the Mechaber says you don't make a bracha on the rikikin, only on the topping, on the merkachas. So the Goyin says, it's like a few words, Chaf Mem Shin Mem Dalid Heviu Ze Haklal. Go look at Mem Dalid. In Kuf Samach, in Reish Yud Beis, see Beis, the Goyin says, Kanal Kamoy Ladabek. What's he talking about? It's Masik Midvash. The Goyin is bothered by a question. How could you eat this cracker and not make a bracha? Kol sheyesh boy. So he gives you two sources that you don't make a bracha on the cracker. One is Mem Dalet. What does Mem Dalet mean? Not 44. Page 44. Daf Mem Dalet Amud Aleph. What does it say in bracha Mem Dalet Amud Aleph? That you can even have bread with herring, with a salty, not herring, with a salty fish, and the bread is bottled. Even Mazayin is not bottled. How could bread be bottled? The teretz is a tafel gomer is bottled. Or you put flour into a licorice, ignore the flour. Kol sheyesh boy, but ledabek is bottled. As we explained, because tafel gomer is bottled. So the Goyin is saying there's a new member to the club of tafel gomer. Just like bread and very salty fish is a tafel gomer, just like flour ledabek is a tafel gomer, rikikin dakin is a tafel gomer. Why? because you're not eating it for the taste, you're eating it because you don't want to get your hands dirty, we'll call it a spoon. A spoon is not kavanas achila. So the Goyin is saying the secret of a kikin dakin is it's a tafel gomer, not for kavanas achila. So it's just as good as mem dalid and toises of lamed dalid, lamed vav amid beis. So therefore, we know when you have a cracker, tafel gomer, ignore it. So now let's go back to our shaila, but we have to be intellectually honest. When someone eats herring with a cracker, is the cracker there only because he doesn't want to stick his hand into the herring and take out the herring? I'm not a herring person, so I'll tell you right now. But I think that if you have a toothpick in the herring, that's pretty good, fork. Why do people put the cracker on? Shouldn't get the hands dirty? If you tell me I only have the cracker, I shouldn't get my hands dirty, I make only a shackle, and you are a kikandakim. But most people that live in Olam Hazeh have the cracker to add taste. So it's not kikandakim. It's there for taste. But the primary taste is the herring. So here we have a quandary. We can't ignore the mezainis because it's a spoon, because it's not a spoon. The herring is the ikka, but the mezainis is also on the map. Plus, maybe it's two foods. It wasn't baked together. It's not even like cheese that you grilled onto a cracker, it became one. Here it's mamish two foods. And if you look in the Mishnah Berurah, Kuf Stam Aches, Sif Cotton Mem Hey, he seems to say beferish, when you eat one food on top of the other, and it's not baked together, it's possible to make two brachas on that sandwich. If I could give you a mashal, again, it's only a theoretical mashal because it's not in practice, but I think it's a good mashal. Lo Yitzur, we had kairach, that we have not the man kairach, the sandwich kairach. You have matzah with maror. Would you make a bracha on the maror? Of course not, because you're eating it on matzah. But let's say without the bracha of the bracha of pas, pattering the maror. Could we say, well, even if it's a fact that you're eating it together, automatically the maror is pater? Doesn't make sense. Because you're eating matzah, and you're not because you want to enhance the maror, the maror enhances the matzah. You have to eat two foods together, because Hillel said you have to make a sandwich. You're eating two foods as one. So, again, we don't make a bracha on the maror, but it makes sense that it's two foods. So, herring and crackers is like two foods. And the K'tzais HaShulchan in Nun Ches Sif Cotton Ches spells this out. The ikka by you is the herring. You're having a cracker to enhance the herring can't be negated. But the cracker can't be ignored. So what do? Beles breira, you make two brachas. So this is the one situation you make two brachas on one food, because in essence, it's really two foods. Plus, chamesh mina dogin can't be bottled, and the shackle can't be bottled, and by schnitzel we don't mevatel the whole coating, but here it's a little better. So it's like schnitzel plus, and two brachas can be said. Pashtis, the way the Mishnah Berurah and the Shulchan don't make a chilik, what would you do? First make a mezainis on the cracker, and then make a shackle on the herring. What I did see in the Sefer Shari HaBrocha, what he says, it might be a better idea to first make a shackle on the herring, and then mezainis on the cracker. Every child knows mezainis goes first, but you have a little of a problem, because really, some will tell you, hakish kenshainik. This is called sheyesh by, make only mezainis. Shackle is a bracha levatala. Now, we're not convinced that he's right, but there is a little of a chance that the shackle is levatala. How do you play it safe to avoid all sveikis? If you make first the shackle, you eat the tuffle first, make a shackle, no problem. Then you look at the cracker. I can't eat the cracker without a bracha because cracker is kol sheyesh by. So then you can make a mezainis and not run into a problem of bracha levatala. The only thing you did wrong is you changed the order of mezainis shackle. You went fakert, but you didn't do the worst thing in the world. But if you make a mezainis first, maybe the shackle is a bracha levatala. That's what he wants to say. But that's the chara what he wants to say. Someone asked me the same shayla. He goes to a kiddush and he doesn't like cake. Can he eat a lot of crackers and be yoytz a kiddush makam suda with the crackers? I told him, listen, Rebbe Hayden, If you're going to make only on the herring and ignore the crackers, or, tell me that it's a tuffle, so you got to make sure that you have enough to have Kiddush Makam Suda. But if indeed this man wants to have Kiddush Makam Suda, then it's almost like he's saying that the crackers is important. Then you have to rethink, maybe it's only Mezainis. If you tell me the ik is the crackers, you want Kiddush Makam Suda, and the herring is to give it time to the crackers, you better make sure that it's not only a Mezainis. Figure out if it's only Mezainis or like typically 2 brachas. But again, if you have a Kazayis, it would be Kiddush Makam Suda. Another new food, English is called banban, in Hebrew, all the Heintige Poiskim, I couldn't even pronounce the word until I learned what it means. Kerambu. It's not kerambu, it's krem boy. Krem is cream in Hebrew, and boy is in it. Now what it is basically is, there's a thin mezainis layer on the bottom, and there's a thick cream on the top. It's called them banban in English. Okay, if you never had it, don't worry. But it's so kedai to learn this, because it's mamish touched upon the whole sugya. So even if you never will have it, it's part of our sugya mamish. Picture like an 1.5 inch cream, and a 1/2 inch, if not less, of a mezainis bottom. So, assuming it fits into your mouth in one bite, and you put it into your mouth, you're eating a cream that's probably 3/4 cream, and a little mezainis on the bottom. So again, even if you never ate this, but it's mamish touches upon the whole sugya, almost like you review the whole sugya. This is not like herring and crackers, because this was made into one food. It's a banban. It's an ayah mitzvah, it's an ayah chefza. If you tell me that you're eating it as one, you like the combination, again, it could be it's too big to put in your mouth, maybe it's more than a kebab, you shouldn't do it anyhow, but if you eat it together, then it would probably a kol sheyesh bo. It's like a 7-layer cake, but it has a lot of cream. L'chayra, it would be only mezainis. Now, but often, the way I was told, people eat the cream first, and then they get to the mezainis, the bottom, and they eat that separately. Then, it would be like we said earlier. You could first make a shackle on the tuffle, even if it is tuffle. You get the mezainis, you make a mezainis on the yikah. Nothing wrong. If that's where you eat it. Now someone told me, again, I'm not familiar with this type of food, the way it's eaten, but someone told me he feels that the mezainis layer on the bottom is there to hold the cream. Now, if that's true, then it's Rakik and Dakin. But I don't know why you can't hold the thing without the bottom. But if the Metzias is there to hold the cream, then you have a contemporary Rakik and Dakin, and what bracha would it be only? Only shakel niya b'dvari. So again, if you eat it separately, shakel first, and then mezainis, eat it together, it's only mezainis. If it's only there to hold the cream, it's only shakel. Now someone told me, again, I can't verify this, but someone told me that that maybe even the cream is mezainis, because they put flour in the cream to hold the cream together, to give it body, it shouldn't fall apart. Great. He was mechavan to a taisis, because that flour is ledabek, and it's definitely bottled. So the cream is not a mezainis because of the flour, that's definitely ledabek. Another point I wanted to mention is the question of ice cream. Now, ice cream, mamish, flows naturally from what we learned till now. Typically, a ice cream cone has a good flavor to it, but they put the ice cream on top of it. So, l'chayra, this would be a case of kol sheyesh bo. But, and here's the problem, most people lick the ice cream first, and you get to the cone, they have the cone separately. So this is similar to the previous banban, that even if you say it's kol sheyesh bo, but I'm eating a tuffle first. So we have a Trumas Hadeshin, we have a Machaba. If you eat the tuffle first, you make a bracha on the tuffle, and you get to the ikka, make a bracha on the ikka. It's not bracha she'ena tzricha, it's my eating habit. I ate the tuffle, and then the ikka. So if indeed the cone is a pleasant tasting cone, so you make a shackle on the ice cream, enjoy the ice cream, and you get to the cone, then you make a mezainis. Are you mechuyev to bite the cone first and the bottom so you have a mezainis? Probably not, because you want to have ice cream first, and also it starts to drip onto your suit and gets your suit dirty, so there's no chiyuv to be a batlin. Why do you have to do that? This is there to help you. If you want to eat the ice cream first, so you're eating a tuffle first, it's hard to believe you have to change your eating habit and get involved with dripping ice cream all over just because you want to make mezainis first. If you're making the two foods, so make 2 brachas. Now, people say there's a tasteless cone, I know what they mean. It's not like tasteless, it's just not as sweet as the regular cone. Some people call it styrofoam, but it's not, obviously. So, and they say that's there only to hold the ice cream. Now, if that's true, then you have a new case of our kol boys for kikin dakin. Because now the cone is to hold up the ice cream. But my kasha on this is, so why when you finish the ice cream, why do you eat the tasteless cone? You don't eat styrofoam. The teretz is, by now, the cone has some good taste of the ice cream. So now it is a flavored cone. So you can't just eat the cone and say it's only there to hold up the ice cream. Because now when the ice cream is gone, so why do you eat the cone? So it makes sense that this cone is also enough flavored, but while you're eating it, you can make two brachas. First on the ice cream, and get to the cone, you make on the cone. Rabbi Yaakov says in the tshuva, but this is easy to understand because in essence, you're really eating it as two foods. An ice cream sandwich is something that to me was always clear, it's only a bar minim mezainis. Let me explain. The ice cream sandwich has two significant wafers on top and bottom. True, the ice cream is the majority, but the two wafers are not such an insignificant minority. I would say it's probably 2/3 ice cream and 1/3 wafer. So, and the fact is you eat every bite ice cream and wafer. So that's a perfect ikka v'tafel. You like the ice cream, you like the wafer. The ice cream is the ikka, but then again, this is a kol sheyesh by. Now, someone told me, no, the wafer part is only there to hold it. I don't understand that, because when you put your hand on the wafer part, you get all dirty, just like the ice cream. A different type of stickiness. I can't believe the wafer is there just to hold the ice cream. It's there as a sandwich. So you're having the mezainis and a shackle, 2/3 shackle, 1/3 mezainis, but the mezainis wafer is definitely there for tam. It's definitely there not just to hold the ice cream. So I would think you make one bracha. What bracha is it? Bari mina mezainis. It's very similar to a sandwich cookie that has two pieces of cookie on both sides and a little center in the middle. I don't see why it's so significantly different. And I saw the Or Letzir, but Tzina Abishol says if you're doing it to hold the ice cream, then maybe you make only one bracha, but he says typically it's there for the flavor of it, so you make only a Bayrei Mine Mezainis. We had a question where someone took cake crumbs and sprinkled on top of ice cream. It's cake crumbs. It's kol sheyesh b'chameshes mina dagan. But, as he told me, it's not there for the taste. It's just there to look nice. So this would be like the Rambam's case, that hey dagan that's there either for tzipoy or for color or for smell is batal. You're not putting the cake crumbs ledabek. And you're not putting the cake crumbs, the svoya. It's less than even the case of cookies and cream, where the cookies is there for taste. This is there mamish for the aesthetic purpose of it. A real difficult question is what they have today, croutons with salad. So most croutons are mezainis. There are croutons that are even hamoitzi. Do you have to make a moitzi on salad? It doesn't sound right. But the emes is, if you hold kol sheyesh by is across the board, so why isn't this a mezainis or a moitzi? If you make a mezainis on schnitzel, a quarter of a chicken, with a little thin tzipa, because kol sheyesh by, so you should make a mezainis on the salad. It's not any less significant than a tzipa on the chicken. And I taka saw that some hainte because they make only mezainis. But as we said, since the majority of paiskim say on schnitzel, it's unthinkable that the tzipa is the ikka. So you look at what the real ikka is, the chicken, you make a shahako. So since the metzias is that the salad is definitely the ikar, so l'chayr you could look at it as a toffel that's bottled and only a bar priyadam. Today they started putting a lot of crackers in the salad, and that I would think to make a mezainis only, because the crackers also there, l'svaya, a lot of crackers in salad. Also, when you have a top layer of the crackers, so maybe you could look at it at that point like two. You take a cracker, make a bracha, you get to the salad, you can make another bracha. But basically, it's more of a challenge because salad is not chicken. But then again, the ik is the salad. How do you disregard the salad? Sushi is one of the contemporary questions that's very intriguing because there are three possibilities. Is it a mezainis because of the rice? Is it hadama because of the vegetables? Is it a shaka because of the fish? But the good news is it's not a difficult shaila, because People say, but is it automatically mezainis because rice is a mezainis? That's the wrong approach. Because it does not say anything about kol shem b'chasei mezainis is ikka. It's kol sheyesh b'chamesh mina dagan is ikka. And this is not chamesh mina dagan. So what is it if it could be mezainis rice, hadam, a vegetable, shackle, fish? Decide what by you is the ikka. If you can't figure it out, then don't eat it. But if you have enough seichel to buy it, figure out what the ikka is and decide accordingly. If you mamish like the combination, you have no ikka v'tafel, go basarayv. If you can't figure that out, make a shackle, because b'diavad shackle pot is everything. But this is a typical ikka v'tafel, not chameshes minei dagan. Crispic cereal was given just for Amolei Torah. There was never a shayla like this in history. Crispix, if you're not familiar, is 50% rice flour, which is mezainis, exactly 50% corn flour, which is a shackle. It's a cereal. But it's mamish 50% mezainis and 50% shackle. Gei fashtei, what's the ikka? No ikka. Roiv, no roiv. What do? So some heinkim acham, they make 2 brachas, but that's wrong. You can't make 2 brachas on one food. You learned today you could, but that's because it's 2 foods. At the end of the day, we're going to say ice cream and a sandwich is 2 food, but this is 1 food. So it's unthinkable that on Crispic cereal you make 2 brachas. Rabbi Belsky told me to say this, Barab and Bishmai. It's not shaykh to make 2 brachas on 1 food. It's 1 food. Oh, I'm going to get to that soon. Therefore, the Maisa, you could decide. You like if you think maybe the rice sticker, make mezainis, but it's not 2 foods. Someone told me interesting eitzah that you put a little piece of cake into the cereal, so now you tilted the scale to a drop more than 50%. I'm not sure that works. And Achrei Chaviv, what you just asked, Rav Moshe Taka says on chocolate-covered raisins or chocolate-covered almonds you make 2 brachas because it's 2 foods. But the Welt asked correctly, what do you mean? It's made into 1. So I refine crackers and tuna, you make 2 brachas. That's because it was not made together. But chocolate-covered raisins or almond is 1 food. You don't know what the ikka, so figure it out. Rabbi Yashav, you say in such a case, make her 8s. Because even chocolate, the ikka din should be 8s. Rather, we don't make a chocolate 8s. But to say it's 2 foods is hard to understand. Let's just chaz over quickly what we learned today. First of all, 1 food is 1 bracha. If you tell me it's 2 foods la'alacha, we could talk about 2 brachas. But the ikka is 1 food is 1 bracha. Usually it's ikka v'tafel, unless you have a mezainis component, and then it's kol sheyesh bay. There is a maila of kol sheyesh bay, lakshu, which is cereal and milk, but basically kol sheyesh bay means the mezainis is the ikka. If the mezainis is there to hold it together, for noi, or a tafel gama like bread with salty fish, then even mezainis or a moitzi is bottle. If you have a flavoring like a tzipui on breaded chicken or fish, the minik seems to be only a shahakol, and best to make 2 brachas on other foods, but this seems to be an exception to the rule. If it's cornflakes, coating avada, it's bottle. Bottom Americanium, the bracha is totally like on schnitzel. Chocolate-covered minute cookie or pretzels is only a mezainis. If you suck the chocolate and then the mezainis, so it's 2 brachas, it's 2 foods, no problem with that. Cookies and cream, ice cream makes sense to make only a shahakol. If you have fish with herring, fish and herring with a cracker, the ikka is the fish. Make 2 brachas because it is 2 foods. Rekik and dakin is a tafel gomer, ignore it. Banbans, depends how you eat it as we explained. Ice cream cone, you make 2 brachas. Ice cream sandwich, 1 bracha. Cake coating just for noi, 1 bracha shahakol. Sushi is totally in the ikka. Crispix is probably a shahakol. Chocolate covered almond and raisin is a bar priate.
Shem Irgen Shir Torah, like the big Ashikah to Smith for today's share. We'd like to give a big Ashikah to the board members of today's share for sponsoring the share of Ari Panis, Levin Shmas Oviv, Rabbi Yaakov Zev and Risocha, Roshal Mirotzai Yudgan Elul, and Rabbi Steinman, Levin Shmas Oviv, Rabbi Yitzhak Yudah and Yisrael, Roshal Mirotzai Tessa Elul, Tenish B'Sem Tzuris B'Sor HaChaim. Rabbi Yisrael, we're sorry for the confusion regarding the time of the shir. All likelihood next week the shir will probably be 9:30. It will be Madia Da'ilam, we'll put up signs. Whoever wants to get an update should either send, if they're not on the email list or the WhatsApp group, just send the email to irgenshir@yeshivanet that come and ask to be put on the list for updates, or send a WhatsApp to 718-851-8651 and ask to join the WhatsApp list to be notified. Shkrat everyone for coming. We can ben Akasha Omer, Rotzak Brocha Zakis, and Sisol Figure Hibnum Torah Mitzvah Shnema, the Nech Office, and Tzidka Yagdol Torah V'Yadeh.
Thank you.